From its humble beginnings in 1830, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been a proselyting church, sending missionaries around the globe to preach the gospel. These missionaries often traveled many miles, endured hardships and rejection, and struggled to find converts. In the 1960s, a group of LDS missionaries in Argentina had a very different kind of mission, a mission of fellowship, friendship, and music. This is the story of los Mormon Boys.
Son los Mormon Boys y Cuando los Santos Vienen Marchando.
The Mormon Boys were responsible for exposing some 6 million people to the gospel.
We weren't just a half-cocked operation. We really put on a heck of a program, and we were well received.
You name it, we did it, even though we kind of billed ourselves as a jazz group.
My experience as a missionary in Los Mormon Boys was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I think we were able to overcome some misconceptions about what Mormons were about.
The idea was to spread the gospel, and I think the idea was great because more people know about the church after that.
It's one of the experiences of my life that I will carry with me forever.
A shining star in our mission experience has been the Mormon Boys.
You have to look back and say, I can't believe it really happened.
In 1962, the North Argentine Mission was formed as the second mission in the country. A successful young businessman from Modesto, California, Ronald V. Stone was called to serve as its first mission president. Having served a mission in Buenos Aires only 10 years earlier, he recognized the need to find innovative ways to spread the gospel.
President Stone, in talking to Alan Aiken, Elder Aiken, I think conceived the idea of the Mormon Boys.
I think President Stone felt a need, and I think he was inspired to put this together because he felt that we needed some kind of public relations in a hugely Catholic country that maybe wasn't accepting us as well as they should. Maybe showing them that we're human beings and that we love music was the key.
I knew very well how much music could preach the gospel.
Music has always been a missionary tool, as I'm sure we're all aware. I mean, look how long the Mormon Tabernacle Choir has been around, performing on TV every week, and their tours around the world. How many people have been influenced by that?
Well, by the time I got to Cordoba, I had already seen how valuable music was to the Latin people. There were guitars in every home. I could go into any house and there would be a guitar somewhere in there, and somebody would know how to play it. And right away we would establish a rapport.
There was a lot of negative publicity going on against the church. And when we went out with music and people could feel the spirit of the missionaries and the good, virtuous, lovely, good report music that they played, and the people just felt that spirit.
At the time he was called to be a mission president, he was only 32 years old, very young. And his wife was, I think, a year or two younger, and their children were all small.
President Stone was in a group himself, a traveling group, when he was on his mission. He knew of how beneficial it could be.
He saw a real opportunity here, a means by which people could be introduced to the church in a way that would actually attract people, where we wouldn't have to approach people, but people would actually come.
President Stone had moved me and Elder Aiken into Cordoba, where the mission home was. And I think that was really the seed that began the band.
I got a telegram that said I was to come to Cordoba and that he was going to have us, whoever he was bringing in, interview a bunch of people and have them play their instruments, and he wanted to put together a mission orchestra.
They had gone through the information sheets of all of the elders and found those who'd had any musical talent. And the next thing we knew, we were all together in Cordoba, the mission home city, in the same area, and asked to get going on getting a band ready.
When the band was auditioning drummers, we didn't have a drummer yet. We were trying out one, and this guy would kind of read his scriptures while he was trying to accompany us with drums. Which didn't work too well.
He didn't seem to be very comfortable in the role either. So at that first practice, they said, well, we're going to kind of have a Dixieland band or something as part of this overall thing with some different instruments, etc. Dave, would you like to do the Dixieland band thing? And I said, sure.
Elder Jensen got up and played, I think, on one of the 12th Street Rag, I think it was. And he just blew us all away.
At that point, they realized that I was a drummer with reasonable skills, at least qualified for our situation.
Eventually, we ended up with 12 members within our group.
So we had 2 saxophones, a clarinet, a couple of trumpets, a couple of trombones.
2 guitars, bass, drums, piano. That's a difficult arrangement of musicians to work with, especially the saxes. To have 2 alto saxes instead of 5 saxes, 2 altos, 2 tenors, and a baritone, is just really hard to work with.
We weeded out what we couldn't use in the band, but kept those that were a mix that we wanted in the end.
Most of these guys were accomplished players.
Phil Anderson could play the guitar and sing Argentine folklore and do solos all by himself. Alan Aiken was a showman and a wonderful clarinet player. David Tuttle could play anything on the saxophone. Didn't need music, you could just tell him the name of the song and he'd play. Guy Wymore, the trombone player, was the same way. And they were the heart of our band.
They were true artists.
I think the rest of us kind of fit in and just got better with these guys.
While the group was being formed, the missionaries assigned to the band began to realize that this was going to be a very different type of missionary work, and not all of them were excited about it.
I think early on I had some reservations about whether we were going to accomplish very much, and as opposed to just going out and proselyting like normal.
I had mixed thoughts, like I'm sure each one of the elders had at that time. We were called to be preachers of the gospel, so to speak, and being in a musical group seemed to be out of the ordinary.
I don't want to be in any band. I didn't come on a mission to play my trumpet. I came to proselyte and bring people to a knowledge of the gospel.
He was not happy about being placed in a band. He didn't think that this was missionary work.
Later, that same day, I wrote, now my impressions changed a little. I can see that the purpose of the band is for public relations.
And from then on, he became a wonderful supporter.
I was all for it. I was all for the band and the touring. I know there were some of the guys were ambivalent about it. I wasn't ambivalent at all.
I thought, okay, this sounds like a lot of fun. Let's do it.
We had to do our musical practices during the siesta, and unfortunately we rubbed a few nerves by doing that because we were a little bit noisy in the neighborhood.
In November of 1964, not long after they began their siesta practice sessions, the trombone players got a handwritten letter from their branch president. It read,
Elders Wyman and Secret, I want to ask you a special favor. Refrain of rehearsing with the trombones between the following hours, 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Will you please follow this counsel? I have been talking to our good neighbors and I don't like troubles at all. I implore you to obey the above schedule in order to keep the peace and maintain our good reputation. Thank you very much. President Rueldo.
The Mormon Boys' mission of building friendship with music was off to a very rocky start.
After the branch president asked us to change our mode of operation, President Stone put us in a house that was kind of out in the country.
We moved into a single house together that was rented, and we called it the bandbox.
I remember there was a day when President Stone said, all right, play for me and let's see how you're doing. And we played, and I think he was disappointed. I think we weren't very good.
We had 12 musicians with no music. No one stepped forward to make it happen, and I knew a little bit about what was supposed to happen because of my experience in small bands and big bands in high school. And I felt like, well, maybe I can do this.
Guy Wymore was the guy really who had the musical genius to put it all down.
And he not only composed just the generalities of the music, he actually went in and figured out what the clarinet was going to play and what the two saxophones were going to play and wrote all of that music.
And he took the talents that we had and the instrumentation we had, and he basically arranged all the music specifically for us.
I was consumed with the music, the arranging of it, the rearranging, the rehearsal of it. I felt that that was my calling in the mission.
Playing together every day and practicing together, we just became a band.
Finally, there was some kind of a youth conference up in some resort up in the Andes, and they sent us up there just to liven things up.
We played, and we were kind of a showy kind of a group because Elder Aiken was a showman and a band leader extraordinaire, and he was entertaining.
We did a lot of 1940s American jazz, or what you might consider Glenn Miller stuff. We did some Argentine popular music. We did Argentine folk songs.
And we sang their songs, which North Americans weren't supposed to be able to do.
President Stone attended the conference, and we played there, and by that time we had a kind of a varied repertoire of music, a lot of different kinds of music. And he heard us and said, wow, this is better than I thought.
We loved the music. It was, you know, kind of right down our alley.
I remember President Stone saying later, I thought this was going to be a jazz band, but I think this will be a swing band, and this is a show band.
President Stone was not only impressed with how the Mormon Boys had improved, but also by the way they could entertain an audience. Perhaps the most entertaining of the group was an experienced missionary from West Covina, California, Elder Alan Aiken. Elder Aiken played the clarinet, and along with Elder Phil Anderson, was one of the leaders of the band.
He wanted me to head this thing up, so that was my role.
Elder Aiken in the beginning, I think he saw what this could be. I think he was the one that turned it into a show band. He had the personality to do that and to be an MC.
We made a pretty good team because he and I understood each other. He was the Jerry Lewis and I was the Dean Martin.
Him and Phil were a really good match because there always have to be a give and take and type of deal. So for Alan to be the mouth all the time, Phil kind of being the background guy to support the effort and to kind of keep Alan in check.
He was able to get up and play the clarinet as well as tell jokes and be a good MC. He seemed to be able to put things together also that we needed to have. Amplifiers, microphones, all the other things that go along with organizing an orchestra.
He was so talented in being an MC and had a tremendous command of the language, just a wonderful personality to be with.
Over the next few months, the Mormon Boys continued to grow in popularity as they played in smaller venues and for local members of the church. By March of 1965, the Mormon Boys had attracted the attention of the largest newspaper in Córdoba. La Voz del Interior.
The first time when we knew we really were a show band and that we could go on the road was when we formed a partnership with the local newspaper. They arranged for us to play at the Teatro Comedia.
And we were billed as this famous group from North America. It was like, you know, we were on a world tour or something like that, and here we were, you know, living 3 miles away.
They wanted to use us for promoting their newspaper, and we wanted to use them to get publicity.
And this was in a wonderful old ornate concert hall in Cordoba.
And it was just a beautiful theater. It was the old style with red velvet seats and red velvet curtains and tiers of balconies that had gold leaf on them. The newspaper took charge of publicity and sold tickets, and we had no idea what would happen because we'd never tried anything like this with the public. Everything we had done before had been with church members.
When we arrived, people were lined up around the block to get into the Mormon Boys.
We would peek through the curtains and the place was starting to fill up with people in tuxedos and wearing furs.
We went in there and this place was just absolutely packed.
We outdrew the Bolshoi Ballet by I don't know how much. It was a lot.
We called out for Elder Aiken. He wasn't there. He came out last, and we said, well, where are you? Where are you coming? And he said, yeah, yo vengo, and that means I'm coming, and he sounded just like Jerry Lewis. And he came out walking and looking and acting like Jerry Lewis in a way, and just had the audience in his pocket from then on.
We played, did our big variety of music. It was our first show. People were laughing. I think we got a lot of benefit of the doubt because we were Americans, because we were pretty unique.
We even did some silly things, like there was some little silly dance we did, which was ridiculous, but people laughed and thought it was funny. And
we played for 2 hours and got standing ovations and unbelievable write-ups in the paper.
It was kind of over the top about how great we were. We weren't really great, but we were certainly different.
The newspaper reported that over 920 tickets were sold in an 800-seat theater. The article went on to state,
the enthusiasm of many in the audience practically carried them away with the desire to invade the stage and make contact with the young members of the Mormon Boys. They're not a group of professionals. They are followers of a profound religious vocation who preach their religion through music. Wherever possible, they always collaborate in good works.
publicity in the paper the next day was wonderful, and I think we kind of saw what the band could become.
After their overwhelming success at Cordoba's Teatro Comedia, President Stone decided to send the Mormon Boys on a mission-wide tour. To organize the tour, he assigned a recent convert, Elder Lanning Porter, as the band manager.
President Stone brought me into his office and he said, Elder Porter, I'd like to send the Mormon Boys on the road, and I would like you to arrange for them to tour the mission.
When he saw that we were willing to work hard and still be regular missionaries, I think he thought that, Mel, maybe this could work.
After a couple of days, I was so frustrated because I could not figure out how to do this that I went back to President Stone and I told him, President Stone, I've thought about this and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to take this band on the road. He just looked at me and he said, Elder Porter, I gave you the ball because I thought you could run with it. Now, get out of my office and don't bother me with this again. You can do it. Go do it.
Elder Porter would be about 1 day ahead of us, and he didn't have a companion. He would travel alone.
He would book 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs in 1 day. That's a lot of work.
I knew that he had an expectation that I would go and do the job, and so I just went out and did it. And that was the way I conducted the rest of my life.
They would visit newspapers and businesses, and they would visit radio stations and television stations, and they would line up what I guess today is called gigs.
El señor es Elder Anderson, guitarra eléctrica del conjunto, como lo habrán advertido. nos va a decir algunas cosas, como ser, por ejemplo, cuál es la misión, digamos, artística que cumplen dentro de una agrupación de orden doctrinaria, como es la Iglesia Mormona a la que pertenece.
Bueno, usted lo dijo correctamente, somos misioneros nosotros de la Iglesia Mormona y hemos sido elegidos para predicar con la música en vez de la palabra.
Not only were we getting radio and television performance time, airtime, but we were also getting tremendous coverage in the print media.
He was an amazing agent, so to speak, for the group.
He was one of those missionaries that didn't play in the band that we felt like was a part of the band.
And then we actually went on our very first traveling tour on April 9th of 1965.
And played for a large audience at a high school. And they just went crazy about us.
They perform in different places and in the front of different kind of people. And I hear very good comment that was good for the church.
Just getting from one place to another was a major operation with 12 people and all of our equipment. We even had to carry our own beds.
It's amazing we got along so well, because sometimes we'd be cramped up in a pickup, 4 or 5 back in the cab, crossing deserts in 100+ degrees, sandy roads, dirty roads. We all got along. We slept on floors, we slept on cots, we were sleeping different places every night.
We had a Dixieland group, we had a folklore group, we played swing, and that's what we would do, is we would go in a lot of these places and perform and give a history of jazz and music in America.
It was all with the thought in mind that we need to get the opportunity for the local missionaries to come into people's homes to where they could do what we were there to do, and that was to teach the gospel and introduce them to the church.
When the saints go marching in, you think we didn't have a barnstormer? They just would go crazy over those things.
Everybody danced in the salon. I don't see people sad. The music was so good, we went and danced.
In a few towns, we just set up on a street corner and started playing. And that was wonderful.
So there were many times when we would travel, there would be a piano, but we couldn't tune the horns to the piano because it was so far out. Or the piano wasn't in tune with itself.
So you don't walk into every concert hall or every building or whatever, meeting place, and here's a grand piano to play. And they had little organs down there, these little pedal organs that you'd pedal the thing to make the air and play them. I played a few dances through those.
Some days we'd play as many as 6 and 8 hours for up to 1,000 people at different shows, traveling all over a city.
Starting out with the schools and the jails and the rest homes.
We were playing in jails, I think, before Johnny Cash ever did. Have pictures to prove it, too.
And then in the evening, go to the radio stations and the concert halls and to the dance, ultimately, at the local branch where it'd be advertised and all the members would bring their friends.
Things don't start until late, so it would be not uncommon to start a performance at 10 o'clock and have that performance go until 12 or 1. And by the time you got everything all torn down and loaded into the cars and trucks and one thing or another, it would be 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Playing 4 and 5 times a day, going in, setting up the amplifiers, all the instruments, playing for 15, 20, 30 minutes, tearing it all down, loading it back up, moving to the next location.
We played so much and so often, 6 times a day, many times. Probably over 1,000 performances we played in Argentina.
And that's largely why we became really good. We were playing all the time.
If we had had more sense, if we had been a little bit more mature, a little older, and known more, we probably wouldn't have set up a schedule that was as tight and as hard as it was.
As time went on, this was difficult for us, and most of us became ill at one time or another.
The entire group was sick. They'd come down with colds and the flu and one thing or another, and they were just absolutely dragging.
Elder Schiffman came down with hepatitis, one of the strains of hepatitis.
And was in the hospital for a while, and we didn't have his services, of course, during that period of time, which left a big hole Bass players are one of those necessary things you have to have as a skeletal structure within a band.
We were playing a TV performance, it was live TV, and there was one song that required a very, very high note to be hit by the trumpet players, and it was so high, or I was so tired that I did hit the note.
He blew that high note and just passed out. He just went out cold.
And he fell off the risers, landed right on his back.
He was just deadly sick. He was, and I don't know how many performances the Mormon Boys played when they really probably should have been in the hospital.
Touring northern Argentina twice, the group traveled well over 10,000 miles on narrow, dusty roads and played for live audiences and appeared on every radio and television station in the northern half of the country. It's estimated their performances were heard by nearly 6 million people in Argentina, and many became enthusiastic fans of Los Mormon Boys.
After the Los Mormon Boys came through our town, the feeling changed to almost, a sense of pride to say, I am a member of the Mormon Church.
We didn't go into a town and not make a mark. I mean, people knew somebody, those Norte Americanos were here.
Because before it was, they came to the church meetings on Sunday, and then they would go home and almost try to hide, if you will, their religion just because nobody understood it.
We couldn't set things up fast enough. We couldn't set up things big enough. It was just such an incredible reception.
One of the things that people loved down there was the fact that these gringos could sing their songs and make it sound intelligible.
We sang their music, their folklore, and their language, and that, I think, really endeared them to us.
I would say the best experiences were when we played to a packed house that liked us for no apparent reason.
Being a performer kind of mesmerizes you on stage. You just can't believe that people are screaming and yelling and so thrilled at what you're doing.
The teenagers and the young people were the most loud. They were the ones that had their arms going, and the yells and the screams and all of that went on.
Maybe the attraction was that we were English speakers, that we were playing and singing rock and roll.
And they loved jazz because they didn't really see a lot of that in person down there.
When a live act came to town, that was a thing to go see and go do.
It was surprising to me that we were so well accepted in a dominant society of Catholicism.
It was hard to be a humble missionary when you were famous.
They had that aura about them of youth and vibrance and enthusiasm, and that came across.
You know, they were young, energetic, enthusiastic. The girls thought they were good looking.
We were being mobbed every place we went by younger people, typically, and typically by the girls.
The Beatles had just appeared in the Ed Sullivan Show in the U.S. that very year, and so I think that was the big rage at the time worldwide as a result of the Beatles. And so being English-speaking, knowing how to play some rock and roll, entertaining was a big deal for us.
But we were mobbed. I mean, after every performance where there were young people, they'd come up and want to touch us and want our autograph.
The Mormon Boys were famous because we played on every radio and every TV station in the mission, the whole northern half of Argentina, twice.
Boy, I sure would never want to be famous like the Beatles or anyone. Those girls just about kill you when you finish.
We were so special that at that particular time we got to have an armed guard for about 6 months because the American consul had been, I don't think he was killed, but he was shot and wounded. And so, bingo, immediately we had all this armed guard stuff. Try writing home to your mother and tell her, things are going great down here, Mom. We got an armed guard out here with a machine gun. Don't worry about me.
But most parents did worry. Maybe not as much about their son's safety, but worried more about when they were going back to real missionary work.
They questioned, is this really appropriate? And of course, we thought it was because our mission president thought it was.
You're not really doing this. You couldn't possibly be doing this. What kind of a missionary just goes and plays?
I am having a really different type of mission than what my mom and dad are thinking that I'm performing.
I do know that we were in the church news and that my parents sent me a copy of that, which was impressive to me.
Their friends and families back home weren't the only ones surprised by this musical mission. The Mormon Boys themselves realized that they were having a very different missionary experience than they had expected.
I figured I'd be knocking on doors.
I had no idea that things would turn out the way they did.
No clue of what I would really be doing.
The Mormon Boys was totally unexpected. I thought I would probably play my horn a few times, maybe at some church functions, and that would be it. But for it to evolve as it did was really quite astonishing to me.
I think it was hard staying spiritual.
Real conversion comes from the feeling of the Spirit. And not that we didn't have the Spirit, but it's a little tough to be playing tequila in an enthusiastic manner that it's not like singing a hymn.
All the innovative things that were done, I thought were done because the Lord wanted it that way.
And I'm not suggesting that what we did was the wrong thing to do by any means. I think it was a good thing to do, and perhaps gave us an opportunity to make a big splash in that area of the world, and later was fruitful.
We'd constantly have to remind each other of who we are and what we were about, because the good that we were doing was definitely there, but it was a lot better when we had the Spirit with us.
Y ahora nuestros artistas entregan su propia versión del himno del hot jazz. Son los Mormon Boys y St. Louis Blues.
While it was hard at times for the Mormon Boys to have the Spirit and stay focused on the true purpose of their missions, it was especially hard for the regular elders to appreciate the role of the band. While the Mormon Boys basked in the glow of adoring fans, the other missionaries braved harsh weather and rejection. At times, it made for an uneasy partnership.
The missionaries that worked in those towns were there in the crowd, and we were performing, we were playing music. But the missionaries were talking to people and meeting people, and people were in the LDS building.
We would take some time in every performance to introduce them. These are your local missionaries. They preach with the word, and we preach with music. So when they come and knock on your door, let them in.
I think all of them, for the most part, felt we left a very positive impact on their towns.
I would be surprised if any of the missionaries that were in that jazz band would tell you that they weren't proselyting. I think that we all believed that we were proselyting by another means.
I'm sure there are many that appreciated the fact that they could make contacts as a result of our performance, and others might have felt like we were just a bunch of yahoos just trying to have fun.
There were those who, in my feeling, were somewhat jealous of what we were doing, getting all of the attention from the media, and possibly did not have the vision of what the band was doing.
When we would go into a city, they would give up their living quarters to the 12 members of the band.
And that would create a little friction sometimes, because the whole 12 of us would move into the little small missionary apartment and they'd have to go sleep somewhere else.
On Friday the 13th in May of 1965, the missionaries in San Rafael graciously opened their quarters to the Mormon Boys. During the day, the band played in the local schools, hospitals, and an olive oil factory. When they returned from their last performance of the evening, they were shocked at what they found.
We were at a performance and got back to basically the living quarters of the local missionaries, where we had all of our material there.
We took all of our luggage and we, in a large room there, all the luggage was stacked up ready to load. And there's a problem, there was a problem with a lot of petty thievery in that country at the time.
And found that we had been burglarized and most of our clothes and things had been taken.
We lost everything we owned, basically, in San Rafael when they broke into the chapel and took everything. And I think what had happened was they read in the paper that a North American band was in town. They were staying at the church. And while we were out performing somewhere else, they just came and took everything. In fact, they broke the door down and took everything.
Suitcases, clothing, cameras, all of their earthly possessions.
They got a lot of underwear they didn't understand, and consequently, it wasn't a problem for them, but certainly was a problem for the rest of us.
So we didn't have any clothing. We only had the clothes on our backs, and all our suitcases were gone.
The only thing we had with us that time was our instrument, our coat, and what we were wearing.
I lost my key possession, and that was my journal. And I was so devastated over that I never took it up again. It was going to take another 2 or 3 months to get another journal back to me. I would have had 8 or 9 months left in my mission, and I never picked it up again.
That was a challenging time. We thought that we had the world by the tail at that stage of the game, and it was a big surprise to us. And I remember going to the police station, trying to describe some of the things that we had lost, etc. And they seemed to be disinterested. I don't know, I guess they thought we were all rich North Americans and we could easily replace everything we had, which was of course not the case.
Although the local police were no help, the other missionaries quickly stepped up to replace many of the stolen items.
Here are these guys that were left with just the clothes on their back, and within a very short amount of time, their wardrobes had all been replaced, probably not fitting as well as they might, but their suits, they all had a suit donated from somebody, and a couple of ties from somebody else, and a couple of shirts from somebody else.
I think it was those times that we pulled together and everybody embraced each other and said, well, we can get through this.
Burglary, resentment, sickness, fatigue. These were just the beginning of the challenges the Mormon Boys would face.
They would receive some opposition sometimes from opposing religions.
All of these Argentine hospitals, unless they're private, are Catholic. Well, at this one, the recording equipment and the intercom were located in a side room of the hospital cathedral. We ran into the Catholic priest, who was quite against Mormons being there, more or less playing in his cathedral. I must admit it was a bit different, lugging all of our stuff through a big gold-filled elaborate cathedral into a side room and then playing when the saints go marching in. It was quite appropriate though, because that's exactly what we were doing.
Coming into town, on the radio, the priest came on and said, watch out. We have a bunch of North American CIA spies coming into town.
As they would go around and knock on doors or approach people, hey, you must be some of those communist guys. Come on in, I want to talk to you.
The impact of that statement was incredible. Little kids would just run up to us as we were in town and recognize us from our suits and everything. Are you guys the North American spies? And it would just give us an in to get to know these people and talk with them.
It turned out to be such a comedy that there was something subversive about Mormon missionaries.
I think it was very counterproductive of the priest to do that.
An edict actually had gone out to not receive us, to the radio stations and to the television stations.
Even from the pulpit, some of the religious leaders would say now, no one of this congregation should attend these concerts. The people who were the members of that congregation said to themselves, they're just doing something so we can raise funds for cancer and for the Red Cross and for the children's funds, for scout uniforms, for whatever it might be. What's the problem?
One of the station managers took such umbrage at being approached and being told that he could not allow us to perform in one thing or another. When we made contact with him, he said, yes, by all means. We were planning on 15 minutes, but we're going to give you half an hour. And not only are we going to give you half an hour, we're going to give you, half of that will be interview. So in addition to being able to play your music, we want you to be able to tell us who you are and what you are about and why you are here in Argentina.
The announcer wanted to talk to some of us live on the radio.
And for about 15 minutes, Elder Aiken was asked to tell who we were and about the church.
And he said, over the air, if you see two of these young men coming around your neighborhood.
It still chokes me up to remember that. He said, if ever two North Americans knock on your door and say they're Mormon missionaries, you let them in and you listen to them.
I don't think you get better publicity than that.
Sometimes the obstacles the Mormon Boys faced were of their own making. Perhaps those are the times that miracles are appreciated most.
One occasion where Dave Jensen, playing the drums, forgot his bass pedal.
Well, that may not seem like a big deal, but without the bass drum, the band has a really hard time staying together. So we sent everybody in the whole band out to search the music stores and ask wherever they could to see if we could find another drum pedal.
Down there in Argentina, outside the big cities, musical instruments are pretty hard to come by. I mean, people play the guitar.
Elder Tuttle and I think Elder Davis were walking along the lake, and they ran into an old man.
We expressed to him that our drummer had left his bass pedal at home. And he said, well, I think I can help you out.
The old man said, well, you know, I have a whole set of drums. I have a whole trap set. You can borrow that if you want to.
We said, no, we don't need a drum set, but boy, we could sure use your bass pedal. And he said, no problem.
They brought that back within 5 minutes of when we had to begin our performance.
So to find this bass pedal was, I thought that was a miracle, so did everybody else.
What were the chances of finding the right drum pedal, the exact make and model needed, in a remote North Argentine village just minutes before the show? Small miracles like this occurred almost daily. The Mormon Boys often went where other bands might refuse to perform, such as jails, an insane asylum, and on one occasion, they played in one of the most misunderstood and feared locations in the world.
We traveled late at night across the Paraná River on a little boat, and I remember watching the sun go down. And the Paraná River is a huge river, miles wide, and we were traveling out to a leper colony in the middle of the river.
And went out there and played for these folks, and there were people that were been there for 20, 30, 40 years. They basically never had outside visitors.
It was a very feared disease, and everyone feared to come in contact with people that were in had leper condition. I guess I was a little bit apprehensive myself because of that.
And we played for them probably for 2 or 3 hours, and you've never seen a more appreciative audience than these folks who were afflicted with leprosy. They were just absolutely stunned beyond belief that we would come out there and perform for them.
You got the feeling that that probably didn't happen very often, and I was very glad that we got to do that.
I really don't know what types of influence we had there, but I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that we had that opportunity to go.
While it was clear the Mormon Boys were appreciated as a performing group, it was hard sometimes to measure the effect they were having on missionary work.
It was an effort to get the name Mormon out in the community, and also to encourage them to use their curiosity a little bit more, and to have the missionaries come in and talk to them about the gospel.
When we arrived in Argentina, no one knew who the Mormons were.
When my parents were first invited to a social activity, they thought the Mormons was a sports team. They had no clue really what it was.
Millions of people became acquainted, maybe for the first time, with the name of the Mormon Church because of a group of jazz players called Los Mormon Boys.
In one weekend, it created an awareness that it would have taken probably years without them in our city.
And part of our show was to say, we're Mormons, and as Mormons, we don't drink.
The funny thing I remember, they play one song I think they call tequila, or say tequila in the song.
Tequila was one of our better songs, and we explained that we had to change the name. And then we get into a word of wisdom discussion.
And they don't say tequila, they say crush, or crush in Spanish.
Which was the name of their orange drink down there.
Como miembros de la Iglesia Mormona, nuestros artistas no beben bebidas alcohólicas, pero ello no es óbice para que la brinden musicalmente, como este tequila.
But we would explain we don't really drink. So there were these little messages in there.
I trust a lot in them, and I believe everything they told me, and it was good because I found out later on everything they taught me was true.
Everywhere we went, the work would pick up. Baptisms, teaching, after we'd been there.
And I started to believe that this is going to be a good life for me, a good change. And I started to have faith in the gospel, and after a few years, my whole life changed.
One Santa Fe newspaper was very complimentary of the group's impact.
This missionary label of music finds itself with a group of young Mormon missionaries who go by the name of Los Mormon Boys. They carry the message of the youth, their health, and their spirit in their music. They are all North Americans who leave behind them a pleasant scattering and a curiosity to know more about the Mormon sect to which they belong, and whose faith they want to spread.
This proved to have been the mission of the Mormon Boys, to scatter curiosity.
No one knew what the church was. They had never heard of the Mormons. And now they associate it with something upbeat, something happy, something positive, something clean.
They hadn't had baptisms in Salta for a long time. And we were told later, after we had been there, that there was a string of baptisms. The number in my mind is 40 weeks in a row that they had baptisms taking place after we had gone through there.
My uncle lived in the city of Mendoza. He was a trumpet player, and he played in the symphony for the city. And when he heard that Los Mormon Boys were coming, he was so excited to see musicians come to his home city from the United States that he went to see them, he met them, he talked to them, and because of their influence, he began to receive the missionary discussions, and he was baptized as a direct result of their visit.
The last person I helped bring into the church in Argentina was a man named Roberto Castillo in the city of Resistencia. And we met him at 11:30 at the end of a dance. And he was just hanging around and wanted to talk to these North American musicians, and we were talking to him as missionaries, because at that point we were missionaries, and we ended up baptizing him.
There's no way I can know how many people joined the church as a result of our band, but millions learned of the church because of us.
It's been over 40 years since they came through our city. And my parents and our friends that now live here in the United States, they still talk about it. For us, it only meant one day that they were there. One performance in our city. One evening that we got to see them. But that feeling is still there 40 years later.
In August of 1965, the church called Richard G. Scott, a nuclear physicist who would later be ordained an apostle, to be the new mission president. In September, with President Stone leaving and President Scott arriving, the end of the Mormon Boys was near.
President Scott, who replaced President Stone, Richard G. Scott, had also been in a group in Uruguay when he was on his mission, and he also knew the benefit. But he also knew maybe the time was right to end it.
And it was time to call us all back into the proselyting areas, and he did that very well too, as far as fitting us into places where we could be most effective.
You can't say that was not good, and you can't say it wasn't good to have the band. And I think President Stone just realized that we needed publicity. We needed to be on people's minds and to be on their list of possible religions, and for them to know something about us.
Today, the church operates in a different way. Missionaries teach, members find, missionaries find too, but they're more in the role of Peter, James, and John. Peter, James, and John didn't carry a guitar or a saxophone and make music to bring people to the church.
In the 60s, That was probably a unique time when those kinds of things could happen.
Missionaries at that time were using all sorts of tools to make the church known. I don't know of any other band that was taken completely out of proselyting, or a musical group for that matter, for a year.
But today we do missionary work in a different way, and our great musical group today, who is doing the work for us, is the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
People know about the Mormon Church, people know about the Latter-day Saints and about our beliefs, and so there's no need to divert the time and the resources away from the real purpose for the missionary work, which is to teach the gospel.
From the time the North Argentine Mission was formed in 1962 to the time President Stone left and the Mormon Boys disbanded, church membership in northern Argentina doubled. Today, there are over 350,000 church members in Argentina and 10 missions. The Mormon Boys played a large part in promoting the church and changed the lives of the Argentine people. But the experience also had an enormous impact on each member of the band.
Each of these guys, while they might have been a good trumpet player, they might have been a trombone player, they've been a saxophone player or whatever, they also became arrangers, and they became lighting people, and they became more than they actually were when they arrived.
We had many elders within our group that were good people, really good people, not only excellent, excellent musicians, but they were excellent elders.
Certainly I'm very proud that I can take and say to my grandson, here's a part of Grandpa that you weren't around to know about it.
We all made a good contribution. It couldn't happen without the individual help of everybody.
It came together so fast and so well, and was so well received. We all felt wonderful about it.
That was just a very unique time, place, and we were very fortunate, and the Lord blessed us to be where we were when we were there.
In my report to the First Presidency, at the conclusion of my mission, I was able to tell them all of the different areas where the Mormon Boys had played, and what a great public relations influence that they were for the church.
I don't think I've ever been in an operation or an undertaking that affected my life so much.
We belong to the greatest church in the world. The hand of the Lord was apparent in not just things that pertain to music, but in everything that we ever did in the mission field.
Guitarrero, con tu cantar me vas llenando de luz el alma, porque tu voz temblando está corazón adentro de la farra, porque tu voz temblando está corazón adentro de la farra. Como un puñal clavado está el grito arisco de la baguala, y el eco de tu corazón bombo se vuelve en las cacharpallas, y el eco de tu corazón bombo se vuelve en las cacharpallas. Si alguna vez el tiempo calle para siempre tu guitarra, sobre tu sueño irá el viento, quebrando maderas de jacaranda. Adiós, adiós guitarrero, tu viejo sendero, ¿qué rumbo hay tomar? Adiós, adiós guitarrero, tu viejo sendero, ¿qué rumbo hay tomar?